Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so why don't we get started here? This is the Lewis County Police Reform Reinvention Collaborative Listening Session. We have with us our panel that has been working over the last 3 months or so on this issue. And our goal today is to review some of what we've worked on and allow people in the public an opportunity to comment on some of the work that we have done. So with that, I'll turn it over to our wonderful facilitator, Christy Andrews-Nicano, who has been with us from day one here and will help us bring everybody up to date on some of the work that we've been doing as a committee. So Christy, over to you.
Thanks very much, Ryan, and welcome to everyone, both the members of the community who've opted to join us, as well as the working group. And as Ryan said, I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to run you through what the process has been so far and what are the recommendations, the draft recommendations that have been brought forward for review and for this public listening session. So let me go through that and making sure that we leave the majority of the time truly for the listening. That is the intent for us today. And so what we'll do is I'll run through these slides that give you a sense of kind of where we've come to. I'll keep the recommendations and the measures around those recommendations up. And then we'll open the floor for folks to be able to have their chance for the working group to hear and listen to your comments. That's the goal for today. And in order to maximize the number of people that we can hear from, we'll be asking and creating a space for each speaker to have up to 5 minutes in this period of time between now and 6:30 for them to share their thoughts or their perspectives. And so my job as a facilitator, I am not a member of the working committee, but rather one who's the host and holds the space for the conversations, is to remind people should you need it, a reminder at 4 minutes that you have 1 more minute in your time. Okay, so with that, let me share with you my screen and I'll give you a bit of an overview of where the working group has come to and where this started from. Okay. And just make sure I'm sharing the right screen with you. There we go. Okay, so this is a New York State executive order that is what initiated this process for us in Lewis County. And this is called at the New York State level, the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. Our focus in our county has been looking at local policing, where we get it right and where we can grow. So we've been working from a framework of constructive conversations, not about blaming, but rather looking at what are the opportunities that we can help modernize or move things further forward. And so the focus particularly for our community has been specifically and exclusively with the Lewis County Sheriff's Department. And that's where we will be looking, and any of our recommendations are particular to that group of police in our area. The primary focus of our local policing and police reform project has been on 3 things: promoting public safety and improving community engagement and fostering trust. And the specifics of some of those things where we were focusing on our energy is to look at helping the community, our community understanding and input on the policing approaches. First step in a process is seek first to understand. And so that transparency and some of the discussions that we've had have been on behalf of the community to start to understand a little better about what policing looks like in Lewis County. The second one of our goals is to legitimize the things that are already working, the good policing where it is happening, and to capitalize on what's effective or efficient, and to identify through those conversations in our learning to see where are the first steps in terms of what might need modernizing. And then the final piece is about safeguarding fairness in our community. And so that's about the opportunity to begin to review some of the policies to ensure that the objectivity in the approaches that police are using generally, and to make sure that any of the liabilities that we have in our community that we are minimizing those wherever possible. And so what we decided to do and opted in our community is that we have had a committee of professionals who've been working in behind the scenes. And what they've been doing is these are folks who either them or their constituents have interactions on a regular basis with the police department. And so this is our group in general. And what I would just ask of our committee is if you're in the room at the moment, if you could just acknowledge yourself for the participants. We've gotten as many of our committee members as possible to be in the room. So if I could just go around the panel and just have you say a hello and your name, please, we would appreciate it.
I'll do a roll call, Christy, because
Okay.
our faces may be in a different order depending on, everybody's screen.
Perfect.
So,
thank you.
Ryan Pichet, County Manager. And Jerry, why don't you go ahead?
Jerry King, Lewis County Legislator.
Tom?
Tom Osborne, Legislator.
Matt Morrow?
Matt Morrow from Lewis County Probation.
Jenny?
Jenny Jones, Commissioner of Social Services.
Mike?
Mike Young, Lewis Defenders.
Joan?
Joe McNichol, Lewis County Attorney.
Sheriff? Oh, you're on mute, Sheriff.
Is it unmuted now?
You're good.
All right, Sheriff Carpinelli.
Larry?
Larry Del Hoff, Chairman, Board of Legislators.
And Connor is our IT director who's making sure all the technology is working. So he's working behind the scenes. So that's our crew for today.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you to those who've been on the working group, who've been working through this for us, using their expertise. And today is the opportunity for that group to share with you where we've come to. And so that's what I want to show you in these next few slides. And then we're going to open the floor to the group. And that's where Connor's expertise will help us. And I'll share that, what the process will be once we get there. Okay. So the stakeholders group, the primary focus in their meetings was to do three things. There is a very large book available that New York State put out with a variety of things that people could look at in terms of modernizing practices in policing across the state. And different communities, as one might expect, have different demographics, different challenges, and different needs of their police department. And so what we were doing was reviewing what was in the broad spectrum of the opportunities to make some decisions as a group, what would be the ones that would be the particular focus of relevance for Lewis County. And out of that, it's important to be able to say, if this is what we're proposing that people work on, that there be some measures to hold some accountabilities moving forward. And so that's something else that the committee was tasked with doing. And then the third piece is what we're doing today. And then from this will come the draft response, which will go to do two things. One is on April the 4th, there will be a public hearing, and that's where the legislator will also review what are those finalized recommendations and make their decisions about how they're moving it forward. All of this to say that what the real focus is on promoting public safety, improving community engagement, and giving more and more opportunity to foster increasing trust. So there have been 3 meetings with this working group, some work happening in between the scenes as well. First meeting was to confirm and make some decisions about where our focal points might be and to understand a little bit more about the current policing practices and where some of the challenges might be from the Sheriff's Department's perspective, as well as from the professionals' recommendations. In meetings 2 and 3, we took that information and made some decisions about where the key opportunities might be related to enhancing the 3 goal areas. And then what happened out of that in meeting 3 was making some specific decisions about what would be the particular focuses of those recommendations and how might that be measured in the months and year to come. And so that's where we are right now. Today marks the public listening session as your opportunity to look at where we've come to in this and make the group's job today is to listen. And so the emphasis will not be to solve other pieces, but to understand what are some of the other parameters from your perspective that you'd like this group to consider. And so the group will be meeting one more time in latter part in middle of March to consider the things that come out of today's meeting, to review and make any final adjustments before it goes to public hearing and the legislature's review and decision on April the 4th. Okay. So the three areas that were decided to be the possibilities, and the list was large inside of the executive order requirements. And so there were two categories that the working stakeholders group decided to focus in on. Two of them fit under the heading of policing standards and partnership strategies. And so one of the key focus areas was to look at policing and mental health, substance abuse and homelessness, and where are the intersections and where might we work on that, because those are challenges in the Lewis County area. The second area was to begin to look at standard operating procedures and to understand better about some of those practices and make some decisions or potential recommendations on that front. Certainly not all encompassing, but as a starting point. The third area where the potential area opportunity for growth that we were going to focus in on and review current policies or practices was around recruiting and supporting personnel, and specifically about training. How does that happen? How are the decisions made? How many hours? What are the complexities that have to be worked on? And the sheriff and the undersheriff were able to provide us with information around these three key areas, potential areas for growth, so that there was some better understanding by the committee. And as a result of that, there were some recommendations made. So what I'm going to do is share with you each of the recommendations, and with the recommendation came a potential measure of how we would know if there were going to be differences or modernization or improvements that happen as it moved forward. So I'll share the recommendation and its measure, and then I'll move to the next one. And then very shortly thereafter, you'll have your opportunity to provide your thoughts and comments. So the first recommendation is about policing mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness. And what the working committee came up with was a recommendation that training be provided for officers using local community agencies to provide some of that specialized training. And there was a suggestion that there be consideration for offering it in multiple formats for the curriculum, because it's complex for the officers to take training. And so looking at when they're working with local agencies to provide this training, that be a consideration. The idea with this recommendation is that providing the local training enhances the opportunity to build relationships between the police and other service providers, and also makes the training available locally, which is sometimes a complex challenge for the officers to meet training requirements when it is in other communities. A measure to see if this one is a successful recommendation and our actions in it is that there would be a quarterly report to help increase understanding about the number of training, the number of attendees, the number of hours that are put in by the Sheriff's Department, and that report be presented back to the General Services Legislators Committee and to the board chair. The second recommendation, there we go. Second recommendation has to do with standard operating procedures of the Sheriff's Department. And that was the recommendation is to create a better understanding of the links between crime, mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness. And getting an understanding of that would happen by reviewing the relationship of these issues, so the mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness, seeing the relationship between that and their impact on potential crimes committed. And how it was recommended that we get at that is by linking between the Sheriff's Department data on crimes committed with the data from their partner agencies in our communities. And so looking at with the intent of creating a better understanding of what is going on, potentially reducing the stigma between those issues or people who are experiencing those issues and what's happening to them in terms of crimes and other police interventions that are required, and also increasing the potential through those conversations and increased understanding that individuals might even get more help. The suggestion was that this kind of sharing of information would allow and build on some other effective reporting that's been happening with the Drug Task Force. And so they've been doing some collaborative work, and the effective reporting that's happening is actually increase the understanding and the support for the Drug Task Force work. So it was, if it's working there, could we try it here? The measure of success for that one was, the recommendation is that there be quarterly meetings between the Sheriff's Department and the department or agencies offering the services associated with mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness, and that they work together to discuss and dissect what has happened in that quarter, share statistics, and identify together any intersections that might have happened related to crime, and this being a first step in a process. So the learnings from each of those quarters might determine what additional or more steps might happen in the future. And it's suggested in that quarterly that it happen in 4 times over the year that's to come. The final set of recommendations had to do with police training, and it was a suggestion that we're at the point of initially understanding more about the annual training and skills updating that currently does happen, and any gaps or challenges that might be related to the delivery and or the participation in that training. And so the report, it was recommended that it contain both the numbers, types, and hours of required training. The Department of Criminal Justice Services for the state provides the standards for those things. So understanding more about what has been able to be accomplished by the Sheriff's Department in relation to the reading those mandates would be helpful. And then the second part of it is to increase community awareness of what the skills the officers are developing, where are the priorities, what are the new skill requirements. So it's about understanding more about what's needed and what's being provided and any gaps that might be in there. And also then that would create a better understanding of the funding needs to inform any future budget request and or decisions. Okay. And the measure on that one was to look specifically at doing or asking for that there be provided a quarterly report by the Sheriff's Department to the General Services Legislative Committee and the board chair, when some of the specific details required in that would be to include the general training priorities, including gap identification, what are creative ways that they can meet that given the challenges of getting people to training, and then finally any resource allocation requirements. So those are the 3 areas: policing and mental health, substance abuse and homelessness, police standard operating procedures specifically focused on links between crime and some of the mental health, substance abuse, homelessness challenges. And then finally, understanding more as a first step in the training and skill updating that happens for the policing department in our community of Lewis County. And so where we are in the process, as I mentioned earlier, is today's listening session is an important component of it. On March the 12th, which is next Friday, the Stakeholder Representative Committee will take together all the information heard from today to look at that and take that into consideration with any revisions to the information on the draft recommendations that we've just discussed, and pull that information together into a final report that will go for public hearing and legislative review on April the 4th. Okay, so I'm going to put back the slide here that has the draft recommendations. And as I mentioned earlier, our protocol for our discussions today for the remainder of our time is to give the public an opportunity to add their thoughts in relation to the direction that we're going here. And so up to 5 minutes per speaker. And the goal for the panel itself is to listen rather than to provide a lot of commentary. And so they're here as listeners. It's your chance to add your input into the process. Connor, what he was going to do is there is an opportunity for you to raise your hand, and he will make the floor open for you to provide your comments back to this panel. When you get to about 4 minutes, I will just interrupt and say 1 minute left. And then at the 5-minute mark, I will say thank you very much. And then we'll move on to our next speaker. Okay. Connor, is there anything else that I need to share with folks in terms of the logistics to open the floor?
No, ma'am. I have my eye on the attendees list. If someone clicks the raise your hand button, I will announce the name or the acronym listed for that person and introduce them before I allow them to speak. And then I will give them the permission to speak. And that person may introduce themselves and make their comment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Connor. So we'll now open the floor. And as I say, I will leave these draft recommendations up on the screen for your convenience throughout the duration. And we'll open the floor for comments and public listening.
Well, why don't we give it maybe until 5:30 to leave the floor open for anyone that might log on and have a comment, and then there'll be another opportunity for folks that may have missed this evening to weigh in when the report is adopted by the Board of Legislators at the April 6th board meeting. So there will be a second opportunity for input, but we'll give it to 5:30 here in case some people jump on, and if not, then they'll have a second chance before we adopt the policy with the Board of Legislators.
Thank you, Ryan.
Okay, I do have one hand raised. I see Jay Hall with a hand raised, so I'm going to allow Jay Hall to speak.
Thank you, Connor.
Hello, am I unmuted now?
You are. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Joe Hall. I'm a resident. I live in the village of Lowville. I'm retired from Climax Manufacturing. I'd like to start by saying thank you to all of you for making time in your work lives to tackle this rather broad mandate. How do you get your arms around something like that? But there's a lot of expertise on this panel, as I can see, and I appreciate you making a sincere effort to tackle this and the work that you've done. The only comment I guess I would like to make is in the form of a question, and I'll address this to Sheriff Carpinelli in particular, but I understand it may not be a fair question to ask somebody who's unprepared. So, Sheriff, if you're not inclined to answer it or not ready to answer it on the spot, I certainly understand that, and I would offer anyone else on the committee to make a comment about it. I'm wondering if there is someone in the field of law enforcement that you would hold up to us as a model, or hold up to me more or less just an average citizen, and to point to as somebody you admire, an authority. This is the way it should be done. This is the way I'd like to see it done. This person's doing it right, or this person has laid out a plan that I think is something that we could work toward. Is there anyone like that that comes to mind to you, Sheriff?
Well, at least that's a good question. I without sounding, let me see, you mean, is there anybody out there across the country or like in New York State that I would want to model this agency off of? Is that what you're trying to say?
Sure. Or someone in the past, somebody, that made a success out of an agency at some time in the past. Anyone that you would think of as an authority worthy of being emulated.
Well, I would have to go based upon my past experience with some of the police chiefs that I worked under, maybe also maybe some other sheriffs from across the state that I had the opportunity to speak with and to serve with. One would come to mind would be one of my past chiefs from the city of Rochester, Bob Duffy. Another one would be another police chief from there named Cedric Alexander, Dr. Cedric Alexander.
What was there about the way they did things that you admired or admire?
Not only did I admire, but I try to I learned from them. It was the fairness on the attitude towards the public, their ability to communicate, and that to be able to be reachable to the public. I mean, that's ultimately who we're responsible for. And I just admire the ways that they did that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I yield back, as they would say in the Senate hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Just as a reminder, if anyone else has joined us, that this is your opportunity to share your thoughts around the draft recommendations that we're using as part of our response to the New York State executive order for policing recommendations. And this is our public listening opportunity number one. As our county manager mentioned, on April the 4th, there is a public hearing as part of the process as well. And so that you're welcome to speak now, and the other opportunity is at 5 o'clock on April the 4th, to be followed by the vote from the legislators.
Christy, Connor's texting me here, and we do have some people that are watching on YouTube.
Okay.
If those folks want to become participants, they just have to go to the county homepage, click on the calendar for this meeting, and it'll bring them right in as an attendee, like Mr. Hall was able to do. So for folks that are watching and want to jump on and participate and make a statement, go to the county website, look at the events, which is right there on the homepage, and click on the police Reinvention Collaborative meeting, and it'll bring you right into the Zoom.
I see Mr. Hall's hand raised again, so I'll give him the permission again to address, as there are no others that are requesting at this point.
Sure. Thank you, Connor. Mr. Hall.
Yes, that's my fault. I didn't lower my hand, which I will now do.
Okay.
Whoops, sorry about that.
So as our county manager mentioned, if you were interested and you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to join us. Lewis County homepage, you will see the meeting there. If you click the link, we will welcome you in. And we'll give it another 5 minutes. Ryan, is that suitable?
I think that's good. Yep.
Okay.
5:35. Yeah. I don't know what does the rest of the panel think.
Thoughts or preferences? Shall we
I
do
would
5
say
more
that's
minutes?
fine. The only thing I'd like to mention is that the address for the county homepage is lewiscounty.org, in case people are not familiar with that spot.
Thank you. Very good point. 5 more minutes. Okay, panelists, that's the recommendation. Is that all right with everyone that we give 5 more minutes in the event someone wants to come in through that route? Okay.
Hi, and this is Jenny. Would it be okay if someone watches this later on the YouTube channel to submit written comments to you?
Yes, and in fact, once the report is complete, which will happen sometime next week, that will be published along with the public hearing for the Board of Legislators, and we accept written comments for all public hearings of the Board of Legislators. So anyone who wants a comment read, a written comment read at the legislator meeting on the 6th, just submit it through through the county website or through the clerk of the board, and it'll be read at the April 6th meeting.
Okay, folks, so we'll give it 3 more minutes here as the opportunity, and it's as Jenny has mentioned and Ryan has confirmed that there are other ways written commentary is possible. Those would be read and heard at the April 4th meeting as well, and that the draft of the final report will be developed next week, and so there's more opportunity then to look at this. But it will be at this point, what this working committee will be reviewing will be based on what we are seeing here. But as I say, we've got a couple more minutes. If anybody wants to provide any other feedback, we welcome it. Okay, folks, it is 5:35, and to say there are other opportunities. We talked about those. We thank this group of folks who have come to this meeting, and we thank those who are listening both in our meeting today. Mr. Hall, we appreciate your commentary. And for those that are on YouTube, please know that if you've got other thoughts or comments, they are welcomed. Please submit those to Ryan Pache, our county manager, and that will be included in the commentary that happens at the public hearing on April the 4th.
Christie, if I could also,
Yeah, sure.
if the community out there has any questions, I'm always here also. You can call the office. People do have my cell phone number too. Feel free to call me.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate that.
Christie, one correction.
Yeah,
Public hearing in the Board of Legislators meeting will be April 6th.
April 6th.
And it's
Thank you.
4th. So correction there.
Thank you. So my error, April the 6th is the public hearing in the Board of Legislators meeting, which is where this will have its final review and opportunity for input. Is there anything else from any of the other rest of the committee that we need to say before we close off for today? Ryan, is there anything from your perspective?
No, just a reminder that next step is we will meet on next Friday at, I believe,
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Yep.
I think it's 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Friday the 12th at 1 o'clock will be our final meeting. What happens from here is that this committee that will meet next Friday will review and approve the final plan. The plan then will be sent to the General Services Committee, which meet on March 16th. They will review it, approve it, send it to the full Board of Legislators, which will be approved pending a public hearing on April the 6th. And that will conclude our effort on this issue. So.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and your efforts. I will second Mr. Hall's comments. We do appreciate the work that you've done to help bring this forward and help us in our goal of increased transparency and building a better understanding. These are good initial steps. We appreciate your work. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christie.
Good night.
Thank you.